people's experiences of that vary. I don't, neither Pernilla and I live in a 2D world. We can have experiences of 2D, but it's not we don't live there. She actually had, she talks about this sometimes. She had a brain injury back in 2012, like a severe traumatic brain injury, where, it caused a lot of damage. And she had like like real two-dimensional vision for a period where she had to walk with a cane. She could barely walk because she literally could not tell the difference between a hole in the ground versus a shadow. I mean, like proper 2D vision, it's not something you want to live with. No, it's really not the goal. Like, it's one of those things that's kind of a side effect that can come about with this practice, but it's not like there's nothing inherently good about not being able to see three dimensions. We have evolved to do that for a reason. There is a very practical benefit to that in being able to drive cars and walk across the street and, judge distances and things. The problem is that we take that for being an absolute truth, right? There is a relative truth where there is a body that is crossing the street. And if it gets impacted by a bus, bad things generally happen to the body and not the bus. There is a relative reality here that we also can't question. So, like with the headless way, and I love the headless way, but you're having that experience where there is no head. You've never seen a head. Everything is just appearing here. So, on one level of experience, that is absolutely true. On another level of experience, though, you're hanging your glasses someplace,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and so there is like a reality of the world where if you have an ear infection, you go to a doctor and they put things in the ear that you can't experience, right? You can't see it, but they can put antibiotics in it, like there is a biological reality that also exists. There's also, like I said, a biological reality where the body is just atoms and subatomic particles. So this particular collection, or this particular viewpoint that we look at, where a body is made of, flesh and skin and hair and organs and all of that, is only one particular scale at which this is a thing. On a much more subatomic scale, you can't delineate between this body and the chair that it's sitting on and the air in the room around it and the walls and any of that. All of that is completely one field of subatomic particles. So we have scaled up to a point where this becomes a relevant way of talking about things. A biological body in a world where other things are operating at that same scale. If we go out to the scale where we're looking at, planets and galaxies and all that, this body is no longer relevant. We can't find that anymore either. That becomes just another like subatomic particle in this other scale. So that's a very different scale. So when we talk about it, we have a physical reality that is, variable depending on how we look at it, but we also have the internal experience of it. And the problem is that normally, before we do any of this kind of work, we assume that our internal experience denotes the reality of the world. Because I feel like I am my body and it is me and I am one, that must be true. And so, what we're doing with the headless way exercises and all of that is pointing out that there's a discrepancy here. Just because you think that you are your body and that my experience is the way that it is, well, okay, investigate. So then where is your head? Is that really your experience? How can you really tell that there's a body? And then if we break it down into senses, like you said, we can see in the visual field very select aspects of body parts in weird, uh, organizations, like there might be like a little piece of a chest or a stomach and a little bit of a leg and maybe a bit of a hand. None of that looks like a full body. So in the visual field, we can't say that there is definitively a body because we're just seeing scatterings of body parts, little limb here and there. In our physical experience, like our felt sense, if we close our eyes and just feel what's there, all you feel are little pockets of sensation that you can't immediately delineate and put onto something else. And then you might have in your mind that mental image of a body, which seems to kind of overlay it and give it shape. It contextualizes those sensations into something else, but we recognize that that in itself isn't real either. That is just another mental trick that is helping to make a body. We can't, smell that the body exists as we think it does. We can't taste that it exists as we think it does. We have no way to definitively say that the body exists the way that I think it does if we only appeal to our direct experience in our five senses. So that starts to break apart that certainty that things are the way that I think they are. But we want to make sure that that is only used as like a course corrective. So much of what we do and say is just like we've been at one side of the pendulum of like the I exists and the body is exactly the way I think it is and the world is the way I think it is. And so we swing over to that opposite side of, there's no self and there's no body and it's not the way that I think it is, but it's just a course corrective. It's to break us out of that complete belief in the way things being one and that things are the one way, the way that I perceive them. And then we start to recognize that I'm actually not even perceiving them the way that I was thought I was perceiving them. Everything starts to fall apart. But that's not someplace that you get stuck either. That we really are aiming for that middle way where there is a body that we do, take to the doctors and feed with nutritious food and take care of and do all of that stuff. And also, it's not me. It's also, this conditioned biological mind body system, which is in no way separable from the environment that it's in or anybody else in existence. That everything is exactly the way that it is because it can only be this way right now. And it's because of absolutely everything existing the way that it does right now. That's another also reality that's existing here. And so we learn to live in that kind of middle way of ambiguity where
Mm.
both things can be true and also not completely true.